now we welcome you inside our studios. This is the Friday edition of Philly Sports Talk, brought to you by Comcast Business. Amy Fadul, Mark Farzetta, and joined, as we mentioned at the top, our resident Hall of Famer, an all-around best person anybody knows, Ray Didinger. Ray, this is, we've been talking about it. You can't keep talking about it enough, honestly, if you think about it. I mean, you just can't get enough information when you think about what this matchup means, what it means for the run. You know, Mark and I were just talking about the magical run that was. Can they do that again? Nick Foles authored it. Can he do it again?
They got a tough road because the Bears are really good. I mean, I've been studying them all week, looking for a weakness. And on the defensive side of the ball, I don't know if there is one. Their offense isn't great, frankly, and we're going to find out a lot more about Mitchell Trubisky. But defensively, they're real good. I mean, if you look at the 10 most telling defensive statistics all the way across the board, they're in the top 6 in every one, and they're number 1 in 6 of the 10. I mean, they're that good. And if you look at quarterback efficiency rating against, in other words, the quarterbacks they play against, what's their passer rating when they play the Bears? It's 75, and typically around the league, like for the Eagles, it's 92. Yeah. So that will just give you some indication of just how good they are on defense, plus the fact that they make a ton of big plays. They have 50 sacks, they have 36 takeaways, and they've scored 6 defensive touchdowns. So this is a formidable task, and you're playing them in their ballpark, but I really do, and we talked about this the other day, I really do think the one thing the Eagles have gone for them, and it's significant, is they've been here before, and many of these Bears players have not.
All right, so how shaky can they make a guy like Trubisky? I mean, he's been great against pressure. He's been great in the red zone. He's come very clutch for this team, for the Bears, all season long. But how exactly would you go about attacking him? Would it be a situation maybe with Jim Schwartz where you see a couple of blitzes in this game? You don't necessarily rely on the front four getting you that pressure?
Well, I think you start with one very fundamental truth, is you have to stop the run. You just have to stop the run. I mean, the Bears, their ideal scenario here is they come in and they run the ball for 180 yards, and Trubisky is nothing more than a handoff machine. And then you can pick your spots with him throwing the ball. So if the Eagles, what they have to do to put the maximum pressure on Trubisky is they have to stop the run. If they do that and they make him be the difference in the game, then I think they have a better chance. But Trubisky had his poorest game, I think, so far this year was the primetime game against the Rams. He looked real shaky in that game, threw 3 interceptions, but he has not thrown one since. And he claims that he got a lot of things out of his system. Apparently, he and Nagy sat down, watched the film a whole bunch of times, and he feels like he learned a lot in that game. But what I'm wondering is, okay, this is his next big primetime exposure. You know, how is he going to handle it any better? And I think Jim Schwartz will certainly have some surprises up his sleeve.
We've talked about some of the things that the Eagles have done to kind of motivate themselves. They brought the ski mask out. They've kind of gone back to a little bit of the underdog role. Well, if they need any more, I guess, fuel for that fire, the All-Pro list voting came out. This one is as head-scratching as I've ever seen. I guess people just, to quote Jason Kelsey, no one likes us and we don't care. So, no surprise, Fletcher Cox, I get it. Perfect. Done. Check. Named first-team All-Pro, first career first team, second team, you see that? First-team All-Pro, second straight year, Jason Kelsey. All right, check, check, check. Zach Ertz, not named either the first or second team, and then you go and you look at the voting in this one. He got 10.5 votes. 10.5.
He set a record.
And then you look at a guy like Lane Johnson, he got 5. 5 votes? I mean, Travis Kelce had an amazing year. Kittle was very good on a bad 49ers team. But as Mark just pointed out, Zach Ertz broke a record, a pretty good one, and he was a huge part of this offense. Do they just hate the Eagles and give him 10.5 votes?
I don't know. I mean, to me, that was so obvious. I mean, to me, if you're talking about all-pro team, Ertz is as obvious a choice as Fletcher Cox. I mean, I thought that those were 2 absolutely automatic. I'm glad to see Kelsey get recognized because I think he played really well. He has played really well down the stretch. I think he, like some of the offensive linemen, I think they had some, early in the season, I think they had some rough going. But down the stretch, I thought he played really well. I'm glad to see him get honored. And Fletcher Cox, of course, absolutely deserves it. But somebody's going to have to explain the Zach Ertz one to me. I can't imagine. I mean, the guy caught more passes this season than any tight end in history, and was an absolutely critical part of this offense. I mean, they wouldn't have moved the ball for the better part of 6 weeks if it wasn't for him. if I were Zach, and I know he won't, but if I were him, I'd ask for a recount. There's got to be a couple hanging chads out there somewhere that still waiting to be accounted for.
Also, like there's like someone that was just like, you don't get my whole vote, you just get half of a vote. I don't even think you're wholly good, I just think you're half good. I don't understand that either. But the two guys that were named first team All-Pro, Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, here they are today.
Feels great, man. Just, just the hard work just paying off. But at the same time, man, none of this is possible without any of my teammates. So, just big thanks to them. Everybody just pushing me to just be the player I am.
It feels good to be respected by your peers and whatnot, but, I think that, this game is such, these individual awards you got to always take with a grain of salt. It's such a team sport. I'm very fortunate to play on an incredible offensive line for an incredible coach. And get put in a lot of good situations and situations that are beneficial for my skill set.
So I don't know if those guys are going to use any of that, but I think anything that you can have as a motivating factor, that seems they've done well with that. Those guys were very well deserving.
Look at Lane Johnson getting snubbed from the Pro Bowl. Next thing you know, he's in the building at 2:30 in the morning going over film and going through his playbook again. So I can only imagine what Zach Ertz is going to do after this kind of snub, where he set a record, like Ray said, for receptions in a single season, where you're arguably the MVP, not even arguably, I think the MVP of this team, maybe at least offensively with the way Fletcher Cox has played all year. But you look at two different quarterbacks throughout the season, a little Nate Sudfeld sprinkled in there, and you're the most consistent part of this offense. I mean, you are what this season hinged on, and doesn't get the nod.
Yeah, what further proof do you need than the fact that we took him off the board for standout star halfway through the season because it was becoming so ridiculous. I mean, I was beating everybody to it. I would pick first, and I would always take Zach Ertz. 8 weeks into the season, when I had an 8-0 streak going, the other guys insisted that he be taken off the board. So, I mean, could there be any more proof that this guy had an all-pro season, and the fact he was taken off the board for standout star?
Has that ever happened in pre or post-game life with a guy being taken off the board?
No, well, actually, they sort of did a thing last year where they decided the quarterback couldn't be
I remember that.
because that was, again, too obvious.
Gotcha.
So,
right.
but this year,
mutiny that goes on that show sometimes, I see. There's a lot of mutiny in there.
You know what's incredible is how competitive like these guys
There's
are.
no award for that.
Seth Joyner, he ain't joking around with standout star. Believe me.
I think he's right at 500. You guys make sure you check in on Sunday for their standout stars and then the results, of course, on postgame. But I know you're going to go over this as well on Sunday, but we get a little sneak preview here with your keys to the game. Yeah, well, we talked a lot, and we've talked a lot all week, and justly so. I mean, you have to start with protecting the football. The Bears led the NFL with 36 takeaways. They had 27 pass interceptions. Honestly, there's no one even close to these numbers. And 6 defensive touchdowns, and they set up more than 100 points by the offense with their takeaways. So if you look at the Bears stats, it's very interesting. They're only 21st in yards, but they're 9th in scoring. So what that tells you is they're not driving the ball down the field. The defense is either scoring it or it's giving them the ball in such positive position that they're just basically tap-ins. So for the Eagles to win this game, they have to protect the football. They can't fall into the trap that all the other Bears opponents have. If they're minus giveaway takeaway on Sunday, they can't win. All right, win on special teams. This is something we've also seen kind of plague both teams. You see Cody Parkey's name, and everybody's like, Cody Parkey? Yeah, no, he's with the Bears now. So Cody Parkey, Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott seems to step up when it's, I don't know, either the game's on the line or it's over 50 yards.
I'm nervous about the field goal kicking in this game, especially with Jake Elliott.
This game could be decided by a field goal.
And you look at Pittsburgh and what's happened in Heinz Field with how bad that field has been over the years for kickers. I mean, guys getting cut left and right, it seems like, with kickers in Pittsburgh. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey, Ray, talking about this field, Soldier Field, being a very bad field to play on. They got to play the game with wide receivers, running backs, with the screw-in spikes and all that. I'm a little worried about that, especially when it comes to Jake Elliott. A guy like Cody Parkey struggling out there. Sure. Same thing with Elliott could happen. Yeah, it could. And the field is such an issue, and Parkey's confidence is such an issue, that he actually practices at Soldier Field. Like the team practices at their facility in Lake Forest. Cody Parkey practices at Soldier Field to try and work through some of his problems. I've never heard of that before, but that's what they do. But I think the Eagles have an advantage in special teams. I really do. All year, we really have not really talked about Cameron Johnston and how good he has been. I mean, he set the Eagles franchise record this year for best net
punt average for the season, 48 yards. Pat O'Donnell, who is the Bears punter, was 17th in the league. He's sort of middling. You look at the punt return situation, you got Sproles back, who's really, really good. They have Tariq Cohen, who's also very good, has to be accounted for. But the field goal kicking, I don't see any way that this is not a close, low-scoring game in the fourth quarter. And it could very well come down to a field goal. And Cody Parkey has had a really rough year. 23 out of 30. He's 27th most accurate kicker in the league, which isn't good. And Jake Elliott, we've talked about the fact he's missed some PATs, but he's never missed a late field goal. He's 6 for 6 on game winners late in the game. This could very well come down to a field goal at the end, and I think the Eagles have an advantage there.
Also, the third one was stop the run, and we'll talk about that with Ray coming up, because I know you're a big fan of Tariq Cohen and what he can do for the Bears. Let's go now out to Chicago and check in with our John Clark out there to set the scene. Right down. No, that looks like that's nice. A little cold. John, you know, this is a big matchup. There's no surprise that it was the 4 o'clock kind of marquee game on Sunday for NBC. This town, though, hasn't experienced playoff football in quite a while. What do you think it's going to be like in Soldier Field?
I think they're going to be very, very excited, because this is kind of a rebirth for the Bears. They think they have a sort of a franchise quarterback with Trubisky, and they've got a really creative head coach in Matt Nagy who really comes up with some good game plans. And also, he has a lot of trickery, kind of like Doug Peterson. He's very aggressive. They're kind of that same mindset. So they are thrilled out here that they're going to have a home playoff game. And I think it's going to be tough for Eagles fans to take over Soldier Field, number one, because it's such a quick turnaround, because they just found out on Sunday that they have a playoff game 1 week later. So I don't think you're going to see as many Eagles fans as you normally do on a lot of the road trips.
John, aside from how creative both these head coaches can be, how much do you think it's going to be important for Doug Peterson to kind of just stick to the basics as well and make sure that he sticks to that even run-to-pass ratio that they've been able to enjoy throughout their wins?
Well, that's a great question, because I think it's going to be extremely tough to run on the Bears. They are giving up the fewest rushing yards per game in the NFL, 80 yards. That's all they give up on the ground. And I think what you're going to see is some of those real quick throws from Nick Foles, the quick game. Read and react, whether it's RPOs or whatever, but get that ball out real quick, either to receivers with crossing routes, receivers on slants, running backs. I think that is going to kind of replace some of the runs if they're not having success running the ball. And that's one of the things the Bears do great, is that they shut down the run, and then they're able to tee off on the quarterback, kind of like what the Eagles like to do. And in 16 of their games this year, 9 times the Bears held the opposing team to 6 points or less in the first half, and that's a recipe for disaster. So I think the Eagles, they really want to put together a long drive, quick throws, and try to get some points early, because you don't want to get down to this Bears team where they're really coming after Nick Foles.
John, I've got to ask you about the injury report. It came out. I know you saw it because I saw your tweet about it, but Isaac Seumalo is maybe the name that jumps out to most people on it. I know that they think if he's healthy enough, they're going to put him in there. Is that the best option? Why not try to go with Stefan Wisniewski there?
I agree with you. I think if it's not broken, don't fix it. Wiz has played well. The offensive line is really gelling, and so I wouldn't mess with it. I would not put Isaac in there. I would stick with Wiz and what's working. It's kind of like the quarterback situation. Carson Wentz is out. He is not cleared, but you're riding Nick Foles. There's some Foles magic again, so I wouldn't change that either.
John, looking at keys to this game, we've been going over them with Ray. What's your number one key in this game that the Eagles need to do to ensure that they actually come away from Chicago with the victory?
Protect Nick Foles. Khalil Mack, I think he is the number one person in this game who could disrupt the game or wreck the game. And I think that is going to be the key, is protecting Nick Foles. You've seen him take a couple shots over the last couple games, and he's actually gotten up. He completed those passes, but you got to protect Nick Foles in this game. It can't be a situation where the Bears are able to come after him and Nick Foles is backing up. And also, they not only sack the quarterback, they tip balls at the line of scrimmage, and they also force fumbles. Khalil Mack with 6 forced fumbles. It's insane what this Bears front can do, and I think that has helped the back end. They've got the most interceptions by any team over the last 5 years, so the disruption up front, that is what they have to do. And I talked earlier in the week about, I love Sean Payton's plan, calling it the Mack protection, where you want to help out with a tight end, and I think Jason Peters may need more of that help than Lane Johnson having a tight end over there to chip sometimes.
All right, John, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll look for you all throughout the weekend here on NBC Sports Philadelphia and, of course, on NBC 10 as well. Thanks so much, Johnny C.